Hello, Namaste, Sat Shri Akal, Salam Alaikum. Welcome back, students, again to the next video for our science. And it's me, Sir Karan. So I'll be teaching chapter 3, that is the circulatory system for grade 7. So welcome back and please join me on. So before we begin with, the name of chapter is like the circulatory system. But before we go into that, like let's try to discuss about what actually is a circulatory system and what are different organs that comprises the circulatory system. Okay, the different organs that comprises the circulatory system. Number one, there is our heart, the veins, the artery, and then the capillaries. Now, when we talk about heart, the main function of the heart is to pump blood. You know, like it pumps blood to our body. To make it very simple. And then when it comes to our veins, it carries the deoxygenated blood and collects from different parts of the body. When it comes to artery, what is the job of an artery? It collects the oxygenated blood from heart to different parts of the body. And when we come to capillaries, it does the function of both the veins and the artery. Now, moving on to the next, when we look in page number 33, we can see, like, we talk about the deoxygenated and the oxygenated blood, right? What do you mean the oxygenated blood, right? What actually do you understand by oxygenated blood? When you say like oxygenated blood, somewhere down the line, you come across the word oxygen, right? So the main job is like the oxygenated blood is like it contains a lot of oxygen, and also it looks bright red in color. That is what the oxygenated blood is. And when we talk about deoxygenated blood, means when blood has lost most of its oxygen and becomes bluish red, and it has lost most of the oxygen, then we know that it is a deoxygenated blood. Okay, now let's talk about heart. What is heart? Like every vehicle, like every machine that needs an engine to start, likewise the same. Our body, it needs a machine to start, like an engine, like in a vehicle, whatever, right? Yes or no? In the same thing, our heart. Without a heart, we are not. What do you say? We are not alive, right? Yes or no? Like in the same case, like I would say, like like whenever you try to start, like, let's take a very basic example of our bulb. Right now, we have lights over here. Without a switch, it will not work, right? Yes or no? The same same mechanism in our body. Without heart, we won't be alive, right? Yes or no? So we have a heart. Likewise, the same way, like the car that has a vehicle, like the vehicles that has an engine. No, the same way we have a heart. So what is heart? I have written down here some few points describing the heart. It's kind of a pump. It is a pump, right? It beats around between 60 to 100 times per minute, right? Yes or no? It sends blood throughout our body, carrying oxygen to every cell. And after delivering the oxygen, the blood returns to the heart. You can see in point number 1, 2, 3, and 4. It also sends the blood to the lungs to pick up more oxygen. Now let's talk about how it works. How it works. Like you and me, we think about, like, at times when I'm just alone and whenever I think like how it works. It's kind of a miracle. But science, it explains everything, how it works. It is made up of muscles. Like any other muscles in our body, our heart is made up of muscle, right? It contracts and it relaxes. Like sometimes when we are very tense, sometimes when you are very happy. When you are very tense, it contracts. When you are very happy, it relaxes. The kind of same thing, just a per se example that I'm giving you, right? When it contracts, it gets shorter. Like when it contracts, like it becomes small, it becomes shorter, making the wall of the heart squeeze inside. The walls of heart squeeze inside. And you know what happens during our one heartbeat? What happens during our one heartbeat? The heart muscles contracts, pushing blood out into the arteries. The heart muscles allowing to flow the blood into the heart from the veins. Again, now moving on to the next one, we have blood, plasma, red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets. Let me just make it very simple and then I'll just make it very short. Now when we talk about blood, what actually is a blood? You might not think, you might not consider, but you know, like you and me, everyone, you know, blood runs through our veins. That's a very common phrase that we use every day, right? But actually what is blood? It is a fluid that transports oxygen and nutrients to cells and carries away carbon dioxide and the other waste products, right? That is what actually the blood is. Now when we move on to plasma, what is plasma actually? Plasma is the liquid part of our body, or sorry, not our body, part of our blood. It is mostly watery and it contains many different substances dissolved in it, right? Once again, what is plasma again? Plasma is the liquid part of our body, or of our blood. It is mostly watery. It contains many different substances dissolved in it. Now moving on to the next one, we have our RBC. We say like red blood cells, right? Yes or no? Some say red blood corpuscles, but all the same, right? Yes or no? What is it actually? Let me tell you, most of the cells in the blood are red blood cells. First of all, red blood cells are unusually cells. They are red because they contain a red pigment called hemoglobin. A red pigment called hemoglobin, when blood flows through the lungs, oxygen diffuses into it. The oxygen combines with the hemoglobin inside the red blood cells. The hemoglobin becomes oxyhemoglobin again. Once again, let me rephrase it back again. Like when we are talking about RBC, like you know, like red blood cells. Most of the cells in the blood are red blood cells. As I have said, it's within the text also. Red blood cells are unusually small cells, right? They are red because they contain a red pigment called hemoglobin, right? When blood flows through lungs, oxygen diffuses into it, right? And the oxygen combines with the hemoglobin inside the red blood cells. The oxygen combines with the hemoglobin inside the red blood cells. The hemoglobin becomes oxyhemoglobin. This is a very bright in color, actually. Okay, and when the blood flows through the body tissues, the oxygen separates from the hemoglobin. The oxygen diffuses out of the red blood cells into the tissues. The oxyhemoglobin becomes just hemoglobin again, because like it's kind of like it takes a reverse course of action. The oxyhemoglobin becomes hemoglobin again, right? Now, when we talk about white blood cells, I'm just trying to touch the surface of all the small topics. Now, when you talk about white blood cells, what are white blood cells? Actually, white blood cells are large or larger than the red blood cells, and they always have a nucleus. When you talk about nucleus, if you refer back, and then if you go through the textbook, you will come to know. Especially in the chapter like Unit 7, you will come to know about the atoms and our nucleus. It will give you a better picture about it, right? White blood cells works like that. They are larger cells. They are larger than the red blood cells. They have a nucleus. And white blood cells helps us to fight against the bacteria and virus. Actually, white blood cells are also known as the fighting cells of our body. You know, like they are always there to defend us. Like when you have a fever, when you have a sore, like if any sickness you have, they try their best to defend our body against the bacteria and the viruses, to make sure that they do not get inside our body. So there's a very brief description of white blood cells. Now when you talk about platelets, what are platelets again? Right? They are little fragments of cells. If a blood vessel gets damaged, the platelets help the blood to clot and seal the wound. So example, like say, just for an example, I got hurt and I'm bleeding. Like you know, the first thing that our body mechanism will do is like it will try to clot in the sense like it will try to defend, you know, like to stop it from like overbleeding or something like that. Not something like that, but it will try to stop it from overbleeding. So what happens? It clots the blood. So that is where the platelets comes into work. So right now, as I have discussed about the blood, the plasma, the red blood cells, the WBC, which is our fighting agent, and also the platelets. Right, my dear boys and girls, please. And then moving on to the next, we have this blood vessels. We talked about arteries, veins, and capillaries, which I have already mentioned, which we have already talked in the introduction part of our video. That will be clear and that would be easier for you to understand as well. Right? Please, my dear boys and girls, please make sure that the assignments, that the PPTs that we are putting on, and we are uploading it, please make sure that you do it, and kindly please do send it on time, because most of the time what happens is like when you guys send it in the 11th hour, it becomes quite inconvenient for us to keep a track on it. Okay, please make sure that you are keeping in touch with your books. Any doubt, any queries, please make sure you call us and let us know. God bless you all. Stay safe, stay strong.